Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here on a Saturday morning. Today, I've got some wonderful panelists, and we're going to be talking about homeownership, the importance of homeownership, things that you should know when it comes to purchasing and owning a home. And just to grant some context, many of you have expressed to me during private coaching sessions ambitions to purchase a home, whether it's within the next 12 months or it's within the next few years. And when it comes to owning a home, it is one of, if not the best way to build wealth long-term. I think there might be some different views between me and the panelists as far as investing in the stock market versus purchasing a home on which one's greater as far as building wealth. But today we really want to talk about what it means to own a home and some considerations for owning a home, because in the state of Washington, there is a pretty wide disparity between the groups of people that do own homes, where when you look at Black residents and when you look at Hispanic and Latino residents, the percentage of homes that they own relative to the average across the nation is very low. So today, really want to inspire all of you to, whether it's learning more about purchasing a home and then the ins and outs and the risks of owning a home. Those are all different things that we want to cover today. And so we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. I'll be really brief since I think most of you have seen me or met me personally at this point. But my name is Obiaha Okereke. I go by Obi, and I work full-time as a tech consultant. And I also am the creator of College Money Habits, which is a platform that focuses on teaching individuals about financial literacy. And I will pass it to you, Nicole.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I look forward to this discussion that hopefully it'll be a discussion that we'll have with all of you today. I am Nicole Bascomb-Green. I am the owner and designated broker of Bascomb Real Estate Group, which is a family-owned firm, independent firm started by my father in the Central District about 45 years ago. I am a lifelong Seattle native, born and raised in the Central District. So I'm acutely aware of some of the changes that have happened in our area. And if any of you are from here, you know what I'm talking about from the CD, or if you've been here any time and know the history of that community. So I am from that community. I no longer live in that community for different reasons. Well, we'll talk about that. But the initial reason was I couldn't afford to live there when I bought my first home. And that just kind of continued on. So my work is really focused on sharing the opportunities of homeownership, the importance of homeownership, how it can anchor and ground you, how it can support you and your family. And just looking forward to have this conversation. Excuse me, I won't get into my bio because you have it, but fun fact, it's funny that Obi mentioned that. I was on a panel this week with some professors from the University of Washington from the Runstad School of Real Estate. And he was talking about one of the people were getting their PhD and they were defending it. And what their conversation was about generational wealth building from a home ownership perspective. And he said that he did some simple math, and that she talked about, and she was a white woman, how her family bought their first home back in Seattle in the roughly 30s and still stayed in their house. And so he did the math, and it was a consistent 88% return for 90 years, grossing them over $8 million. You can't do that on the stock brokerage. And he made that very clear. There's nothing in this country, in this world, that can give you that kind of return. So fun fact, Obi, I'm glad you brought that up. Things happen for a reason while I was on that panel to get that information. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to having this conversation.
All right, thank you, Nicole. And Brooks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I am Brooks Gleen. I am a real estate broker with Windermere Real Estate, a part of a Kinzel Eidson team. I've been in the business now for a little bit over 16 years. I think that every time, when you find realtors who've been in the business for a while, they've worked in different areas of real estate. I used to own my own company in Chicago, Extra Mile Real Estate and Property Management Company. So I worked in property management for a while. I relocated here to Seattle about 5 years ago. I used to work as a paralegal for attorneys as well. So I had this really great background that I think serves my buyers and sellers well. But currently what I am doing, I am a full-time real estate broker, and I also own my own mobile notary company, again, connected to real estate. Now I'll stop there because I'll share my little stories throughout our discussion, but thank you for allowing me to be here.
Great. Thank you, Brooks. And Darryl.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you to Bird Bar Place for inviting me for this discussion. I'm Darryl Smith. I serve as Executive Director of HomeSight. We are a 32-year-old community development corporation, as well as a community development financial institution. So in plain English, we partner with community organizations to help them maintain their place in community. We're located here in Southeast Seattle, although we were born in the Central District. I'm a Southeast Seattle resident myself, and our big calling card for us is really helping low and moderate income families build generational wealth through home ownership. We are a builder of affordable homes for sale, and we also are a pretty major mortgage lender, again, focusing really on low and moderate income families. And particularly for most of our real estate lending, we often or almost always pair down payment assistance in a variety of ways and flavors, if you will, in all of our mortgages. We also provide home buyer education classes, one-on-one counseling, a whole suite of services really focused on helping families maintain a toehold, build community, and build generational wealth, and all that comes with it. And we'll get into all of that and the reasons why. That's what we do. That's what we're dedicated to as a nonprofit organization, 32 years old here in Western Washington, but serving the entire state of Washington. And I'll stop there.
Perfect. Thank you all for your introductions. So now we're going to jump into the panel. And as Stephanie mentioned, please feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout. There will be a Q&A at the end. So now when it comes to homeownership, obviously there are a ton of questions around how to go about buying a home. And I think for individuals who may have concerns or questions around their credit score or how much they should save before buying a home, wanted to start with you, Darryl, and ask, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen first-time home buyers face when trying to purchase a home, and how can they overcome these challenges, or how have they overcome these challenges?
Well, thank you for the question, Obi, and I'll answer this from a couple of different perspectives. Like Brooks and Nicole, years ago, I was a real estate professional. I was a broker working for Windermere. Actually, I had about a 15-year career, and then took some time away to work in government, and eventually found my way here to HomeSight. Two of the biggest barriers are often credit score, making sure that a credit score is something that a mortgage lender is going to accept. And then down payment is a huge barrier for first-time purchasers. And that really is particularly what we're aimed at trying to cure, which is very often that let's call them a young couple, or that individual doesn't have a big pot of money to bring to a transaction. They don't have 20 or 25% down. And I'll speak again from the HomeSight perspective. We actually work with individuals and families that are getting that mortgage where the credit score does not have to be quite as high as a typical commercial bank would be requiring. Our credit score typically starts at 620 is what we're looking for. And then in terms of that down payment, we require 1% down in our transactions because we're layering in so much down payment assistance. So often it's thought out there that if I don't have like a 700, credit score and 10 or 20,000 bucks in my pocket, I'll never become a homeowner. Not necessarily the case, but those are two big barriers. And what we try to do as an organization is work with folks. We don't care if it takes 2 weeks or 2 years to get you on a pathway to maybe improving that credit score, helping you plan and take action to make a difference there. And also, helping you think about budgeting and then bringing as much down payment assistance as needed into the transaction to get at that secondary challenge, because those are two really, really big barriers that we see over and over again.
Fantastic. Thank you, Darryl. And wow, the 1% down, that is, that's very advantageous.
You need to come and see me.
And then same question to you, Nicole.
For me as a practitioner, the biggest barrier is fear. The biggest barrier I see is people who are living in fear of either not being able to do it or thinking that it's not for them. And so that for me is even a bigger hurdle than the credit and down payment, because we can't even get there because of fear. And so I like to really walk with my clients and talk with them about pushing out of that fear from just a practical perspective. You pay rent, you have to live somewhere, you pay it every month. Why not pay it to yourself? I understand that there's a different level of responsibility, but it's a level of responsibility that helps you and your family. And so there are, that is the biggest, hugest hurdle that I see. And then yes, to Darryl's point, credit and down payment. But credit can be fixed. Down payments are out there, especially in the state of Washington. We have some phenomenal down payment programs, and we have to break those misconceptions. You don't have to have 20% down to buy a home. For a conventional loan, and I don't know if you've talked about loan products, but there's different products, but typically the main four. There's conventional, which is what we call A paper. You only have to put 3% down. There's FHA, where you only have to put 3.5% down. There's VA, if you're a veteran, you don't put anything down. And then USDA, you don't have to put anything down. So that's a rural home. If you live in rural spaces, you can get a USDA loan, you don't have to put anything down. And then we have partners like Darryl at HomeSight, where they have unique products that they can create, where you only have to come with maybe $1,000 at this organization out of your pocket, or 1% at that organization out of your pocket. You just have to know who to talk to, which is a challenge, and that's why we're here, to provide you guys, to provide this group resources, because we know where the resources are. But that fear is one of the main things that I see is the hardest for people to overcome.
Thank you, Nicole. And Brooks.
You've heard that saying before, don't go grocery shopping if you're hungry, or when you're hungry, because you tend to overspend. I'm going to use that example. As you can imagine and already heard, there are so many challenges, but one that I would like to talk about is false expectations with first-time buyers. You've done the work, the credit, you got the down payment, you've overcome the fear, and now you're sitting in front of an agent ready to go buy a home, and you've seen everything. You've seen your friend's big, gigantic, beautiful home. You've seen the 3 bedrooms with the granite countertops, and you want that. And so most times as a first-time buyer, I have to sit down with you and help you set healthy expectations. And one of the biggest challenges, you have to go buy where your money leads you. And so one of the challenges is helping a buyer understand that this is your first home, not your forever home. And sometimes when you say in your mind, I really wanted to live on this block in this neighborhood, but your money takes you someplace else. We have to overcome that challenge and help you find the love in the home that you're about to buy and build there. So that's one of the challenges I think we work with a lot with first-time buyers.
And I appreciate you sharing that, Brooks, because that is so key. Your first home is usually not your last home and not your final home. So your first home gets you there. And so keeping that in mind and understanding that this is a starting point where you can still love it and know that, okay, I'm using this. The average home buyer is not in their home longer than 5 to 7 years, the average first-time home buyer. So, those are some things to keep in mind too, along with what Brooks said, because I totally agree.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting that you mentioned that, because I know that for myself on my home buying journey, which has spanned a couple of years now, my focus has been on getting like the home, like my dream home, and I guess forgetting that I don't need to start there because it would be expensive and maybe not entirely realistic. So I do appreciate that. And I did have a follow-up question, I think for all of you. So you started to mention some different ways where people can put low down payments down when purchasing a home. Now, one of the, I think, significant costs that is ongoing when owning a home, of course, is a mortgage. And so I suppose I'm curious as to if somebody is putting a low down payment down, wouldn't that result in a high mortgage payment?
Well, hi. Oh, go ahead, Darryl.
I would just say it depends, right? It really depends on what the interest rate is, because that has a really big effect on what your payment's going to be. But I do want to just, if you'll allow me, back up for 1 second, because I don't know what this group has been learning about real estate and the journey and housing and all of that. But there's a real key word here that we need to focus on, especially when it comes to that first home versus, because people, as Nicole has absolutely correctly stated, will stay in that home 3, 5, 7 years and then usually get something else. So the key here is a term called equity. And equity is massively important in this country, right? Because equity is kind of the difference between what did you pay to get in and then what is the home worth over time. The difference between this line and this line is called equity. That equity is like magic money, and it's better than the stock market has ever been, or frankly ever will be, because the value of real estate, particularly in certain markets like the Pacific Northwest, we're not Texas where there's land as far as the eye can see, right? There's only so much Western Washington. And so when you get into that home and you build equity, you can do a lot of things with that equity, not least of which is take it and then use it to get the next home you want, right? So when you talk about the mortgage and the costs, it is related to how much you put down and what the interest rate is. But something I really want to emphasize is you will build equity for somebody. If you're renting, you're building equity. It's just not for you. You're building equity for the person you're paying your rent to. My argument, because it's June and it's National Homeownership Month, is why not build equity for yourself? And sometimes we've seen this, the mortgage payment you end up making is really not that far off from what you were paying in rent. You'd be surprised.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry.
Nicole.
Oh, no, sorry. Somebody's at my door and I was trying to read my ring and you guys not hear me or see me. And then you heard me. Pitfalls of working here at home. So for me, payment is also relative, right? So when you're qualifying for a home, you qualify for what you can afford. So if you can afford $2,000 a month, that's what we qualify you at, $2,000 a month. And then we find a home, like Brooks and I, that fits within what you qualified for. So those terms are relative from an actual payment perspective and budgeting. You'll get qualified at HomeSight and maybe they might say, hey, you're qualified for a $3,000 payment, but that's not comfortable for your budget. So what Brooks and I will do and say, hey, what qualifies for your budget? And you say, hey, I'm at $2,500. So we back down to the price that we know fits in that price point, and that's what we look at. But to Darryl's point, equity is so, so important. And you cannot get that kind of equity anywhere. I'll give you an example. I bought a home 10 years ago, and I've now doubled the value of that home. So I now have more equity in it than I even paid for it. And I can walk away and have a really, 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 really nice sum of money. That's what homeownership and equity does. So, I wanted to share that from a payment perspective. It's very relative. And now I'm going to step away and get the door so I don't have any more interruptions.
I'll just jump in real quick and just say ditto to what Nicole just shared. And I see this in a different light. I have a client right now who's trying to purchase a house, and they have a maximum that they've been told they're approved for. And they'll say, well, Brooks, that maximum amount makes my monthly amount this much, but I really want to be down here. So to your question, yes, if you put down more, your payment change, but you're approved based upon what your income is telling you that you can afford. And then we try to find in our conversations with you, what do you feel comfortable paying? And then that's why some people will say, I can buy the house, but I don't want to be house poor. I can afford it, but then I can't afford to furnish it or afford to go out to dinner. So it really becomes what's best for you, but that's how that works as well.
And I would just add to Brooks' point, here at HomeSight, when you get a mortgage loan with us, we're not looking to overburden anyone, obviously. We'll qualify you for, that where you qualify, but you certainly don't have to go shopping at that level. And typically for us, when we talk about down payment assistance or second mortgages, typically for most of our programs, in fact, I think pretty much all of them, they're what we call silent second mortgages. So we're going to use that down payment assistance to get you qualified in the home, right, for your payment. But you won't make payments on the second mortgage, meaning the down payment assistance, let's say it's $25,000, or in some instances, 40, 50, 60. We've even seen deals that have 80, 90,000 bucks worth of down payment assistance in it to make the payment more attractive for you, but you don't pay on that second portion until the house is either sold or after 30 years, or if you happen to refinance it, then that portion would become due, right? So if you're going to buy a home and stay in there for any number of years and build that equity that we've been talking about, you're actually not going to make the full payment on the first and second mortgages. Those second mortgages will sit there silently, as we say. And our theory is when you stabilize your housing and you stabilize yourself in a mortgage, you're going to improve your overall financial picture. So you're probably going to end up growing to be able to make the payment because other areas of your financial life will also become more solid, right? And when that happens, the theory for us is you'll be able to start making that payment. You don't have to not pay it. After 5 years, you could say, you know what, I'm making more money now. I'm going to start paying on my second mortgage. That's totally up to you. There's no prepayment penalty on these types of loans. So we try to structure it in a way that's really advantageous to the client.
Fantastic. And I know that we need to move on to the second question here, but I do have one just fast follow-up because you've all mentioned getting qualified, and it is important that before purchasing a home, and I mean, in most cases required for individuals to get pre-qualified, and so there's pre-approval and then there's pre-qualification. And for individuals who are looking to purchase a home, whether it's right this instant or in the future, there are ways to go about figuring out how much you would be pre-approved for, pre-qualified. And I was wondering if one of you would just be willing to share the difference between pre-approval, pre-qualification, and I know that you can go online to calculators and just figure out that number, but if one of you, maybe 2 of you or 3 of you, could share the.
Give you the, I was an underwriter for 15 years, a recovering underwriter, so I can give you the layperson. So everyone's heard of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, right? Hopefully everyone's kind of heard of those government entities. They are the ones who house mortgage lending, if you will, outside of the kind of work HomeSight does. So we're just talking about traditional lenders. They have systems that they run your information through. It's AI, if you will. One's called Desktop Underwriter, one's called Loan Prospector. So Fannie Mae uses Desktop Underwriter, Freddie Mac uses Loan Prospector. A lot of times a loan officer will just plug your information into the automated system and say, hey, we got it approved, go buy. That's a pre-qualification. Now a pre-approval goes a step further. They get that run from that automated underwriting system, DU or LP, and then they put it in front of someone who is like me, an actual underwriter. So human eyes are looking at it for the things that the system doesn't see. So those are things where perhaps, you had a good credit score, but you were 17, you're 19 and your parents had you on their card for, 3-4 years. And so it artificially increased your credit score. When it gets in front of me, I can see that, okay, this is an artificial increase. Their real credit is only 18 months old. AUS can't see that. Only an underwriter can, a person can. So when you get your package in front of an actual human being that approves you, that's called a pre-approval. So you're fully underwritten, you're ready to go. All you're waiting for is finding the property. So there's no, hidden things that'll pop up unless you as the buyer do something like quit a job, or that happens, go buy something to affect your credit or things like that. Outside of that, just, everything remaining flat, You get a pre-approval if you're in front of a human being and they see it and approve it, and pre-qualification is the system approving you and no human eyes have seen it yet. I bring all my clients to pre-approval because there's always something that initially that's going to pop up in a lot of cases. So I don't want us to get out there, put an offer on a home, and then we get it to an underwriter and say, oops, you know, we didn't see this piece, we can't, and that actually happened to me personally. So it's real. And it happens. And it was against the advice that I gave the person who I was working with. And by the time it got in front of somebody, something popped up. So that's the difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. You always want to force that pre-approval.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. So now moving on to our second question. What are some existing programs and incentives that folks here can all use when it comes to purchasing a home, especially those who may have lower credit scores or lower income? And for this one, starting with you again, Darryl, and then Brooks, and Nicole.
So I can only really talk about the things that HomeSight has to offer. There may be other lenders out there, probably not with the suite of things we offer, but I would certainly encourage folks to cross shop. That's a really good idea as a consumer of financial products. But at HomeSight, we are a little different, right? We're not a bank. We're a nonprofit lender governed by the Department of Financial Institutions, or DFI. And so we can be really creative. We're also what's called a portfolio lender, meaning that the loans we make for people to purchase homes, we will sell some of those in the secondary market, but a lot of them we keep them in-house, meaning we have our own portfolio of money to lend, which is good because down payment assistance, which is a very big calling card for us, comes in a variety of ways. So here's a couple of examples of first mortgages. We have the Home Advantage program, which through the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, of which Nicole is a commissioner. Thank you again, Nicole, for your great work there. So we are a correspondent lender with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, which means we are going and making mortgage loans with their investment. Their only existence, they're really here to help communities here in the state of Washington to become homeowners, to build that equity that we talked about before. So we have very attractive, fairly low interest rate mortgages as a correspondent lender. Then on top of that, we have some very special programs specifically for community. One is called our Vista loan. It's an I-10 product that does not require a social security number. It's alternate credit. We can look at cell phone bill, rental payment, utility payment, all of these sorts of things. Heck, we'll even look at different credit cards or something just to help you establish credit, but you don't have to have a social security number, right? It's a very important product. We have a Sharia compliant loan. If you are a Muslim member of the community, very often if you are devout, you cannot have a loan that has interest attached to it. We've developed a mortgage program that is looked at by the imams and has been blessed, and essentially says that we have a way for Muslim community members to become homeowners here in the community. On the down payment assistance side, here's where it gets really, really good. I've got the social justice down payment assistance program. Anywhere in Washington State it can be applied. It's up to $10,000. This is no interest money. We use it to help you get in the home at no interest. It's almost like free. You got to pay it back at the end, but there's no interest accrued on it. We have a program called the Sam Smith Fund that we've developed here at HomeSight in partnership with others, including Nicole over at US Bank and Windermere Real Estate and others, that we're specifically using to help the African-American community to get into home ownership. It's up to $20,000 as a silent second mortgage. And then the city of Seattle, King County provides us with specific down payment dollars. So if you're buying a home in the city of Seattle, I believe we can probably get up to about $85,000, $90,000 of down payment assistance. There's a lot of different programs out there. And the thing to do is to get in touch with, for example, one of our folks on our team, our Homeownership Center at HomeSight, sit down and have a conversation with our mortgage lending team, go through our home buyer education classes is incredibly important. As Nicole was saying, having that pre-approval when you go shopping with Brooks improves your negotiation standing, because you've been looked at by a human being who says this person's ready to buy. They can be underwritten for a mortgage in the variety of ways. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. The biggest challenge I see is really making sure the information is available to folks. That's why, this panel is so important to let all of you know that you do have choices. There are opportunities out there.
I'll jump in and keep my answer a little bit shorter because I don't do the lending side, but I will tell you in my years of working with first-time buyers, the program that helped them most were FHA programs. They didn't have this larger down payment. And so again, I've seen buyers at first-time buyers who were able to be approved through an FHA program where the down payment was a little bit less. So what Darryl also just said, when he said cross shop, every time I meet a lender, I'm listening to what they are offering specifically to see if it resonates with a client that I'm working with or somebody that I'll work with, because most times different lenders offer different programs and there's something that will benefit this one person that may not benefit the other person. So my suggestion would be to cross shop, speak with different lenders, have that initial conversation with your counselor or with a realtor so we can kind of really understand what you're looking for and then point you in the right direction. I'll also just share this real quick story. Sadly, I had a client, first-time buyer, who was about to close on a house in a couple of days, and it was denied. Sadly, it was denied. And it was kind of to Nicole, what you were just talking about. They were qualified, but when eyes got on it, there were some issues. And when you're a first-time buyer, every dollar matters. And you don't have the luxury of something coming up from the past or something that someone didn't see. And because this one particular buyer was with a particular lender who did not have a lot of programs to offer, this loan was ultimately denied. Now, this buyer will most likely be able to purchase something in a couple of months if we go look for other lenders, and we absolutely will. So it just really depends upon who you're working with and understanding what programs that they're offering.
And I wasn't, like I said, for a long time, part of that being an underwriter. And a lot of that is who you're working with. So we are real estate brokers, Brooks and I. And so it is incumbent on us and important that we understand the lending space. I will, I have a deeper understanding because of the work that I used to do. And I do use that in lending with in supporting my clients, because every client is different. There are some clients I can go to HomeSight. And there's some clients where they make too much money for HomeSight or the commission. So I have to take them to a traditional lender, and we have to be creative. So it's really important to understand that there's different options out there. But for me, really what I found as a first start is getting a really good real estate broker who has your best interest at heart to help walk you through that and get you connected to the right lenders. Because Brooks and I have a lot of connectivity in the space for the different kind of clients we get. And having a relationship with HomeSight, I know Darryl mentioned I'm on the board at HomeSight as well because I love their work. It's that important. It is so important that we have options though, because everyone is not the same. So it's important that we are able to look into that and see what that looks like for you personally. But there, like Darryl said, there are some lenders who will go down to 600, even 580 credit score. You will pay more from an interest rate perspective. So there is some costs associated with that. But there are some programs that do go down to 580 credit score. But again, when an underwriter gets in front of you, it's not just your score. Okay, is your score low because you pay all your bills on time, but all your credit cards are maxed? Or is it low because you have a lot of slow pays and collections and that kind of stuff? Well, that's a different kind of conversation. So it isn't just about score. It's about what your credit report looks like and your entire capacity as a buyer. So it's really important that you have those key pieces, and why these spaces are so important to get educated around that, because there's so many misnomers out here in the marketplace that I want to make sure that I share that information.
Yeah, that's really key stuff that you're talking about, Nicole, because we certainly want to think about all of our clients not as a number or sort of a set of algorithms, but a human being. What's in the credit score? How can we work with you to clean up certain areas that are going to really improve your standing and your ability to get a mortgage that is attractive in terms of interest rate and the payment you can make. So it's really important to talk to the right real estate professionals, and not just like go online to Rocket Mortgage, because you probably won't get the same kind of treatment back, because you as a first-time buyer in particular, it's really important. I was a first-time buyer way back in 1994, and I had someone who could sit down with my wife and I and really see our funky way of making money. I was a professional stage actor there back then, and it didn't, my income was rather unusual looking. So we needed someone to really view us as human beings and work with us. And as a result, we were able to finally purchase.
And you all have talked about, well, first of all, thanks for your responses. And you all have talked about various programs. And when we talk about purchasing a home, individuals are likely to interact with a lot of different individuals, whether it's the real estate agent or insurance brokers. And I mean, if you look at new construction communities, there's a slew of people that you might talk to. And so can you talk about the difference between all these people? And like, I guess, I think there was also mention of shopping for rates earlier, but just talking about some of the different people that you might interact with when it comes to purchasing a property and what their roles are.
Sure. Are you starting? Okay. I was going by the list if I was starting or who was starting. So
anyone can go.
Anyone? Okay, go Brooks. Go Brooks.
I wanted to jump in real fast and say, Darryl just said it. It's not a number, it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to form with each person is this relationship, because it becomes a wonderful journey that you're on. And so when you form a relationship, say you meet me and you're like, oh my God, this guy Brooks, he's a great guy. I have to come with a level of expertise, but also to listen to you. So as the broker, and this is typically how it happens, someone will come to me and say, hey, Brooks, I'm looking for a home. From my knowledge, I'm going to speak with them. I'm going to find out, well, are you already working with a mortgage broker or a banker? So now, no, I'm not. Well, they're the ones who give you the money. So I'm going to point them in a direction of where you go get finance, where you go get this loan. I'll tell them, as the real estate agent or broker, that's the same term, I will help you find the house. So no matter where you go, if you go to a new construction, there are agents working there. If you want to have something built, as your agent, I'm able to help you in every step of the process. So while there are a whole lot of players in the field of real estate, you really want a team with your real estate broker, or even if you start off with a mortgage lender, they'll probably refer you to someone that they know. And then you form that relationship. But it's typically the real estate broker helping you then you have to get approved and have the money. And then you have to insure the house. So there's an insurance agent. So it's a small family or network, but it's a whole bunch of people out there doing the same job. So that's why you really want a core team and someone who's listening to you and helping you meet your needs.
Yeah, and to Brooks's point, we as real estate brokers really serve the purpose of being your conveners. And so we are the ones who work with all those. Once you get in contract, I am the one who's working with the lender and the escrow and title. So you also have escrow and title. So escrow and title is the third party that is not that where all the monies go. So the money's from the lenders, money from borrowers, seller, all the money goes to escrow, and they then disperse that money at closing. That's where you go to sign your docs when you're ready to close on your home. I work directly with escrow and title. Insurance agents, like Brooks said, you have to insure the home. A lot of people, I just share with them, do you like where your car insurance is? Go there and get a bundle, you get a discount. Or we have great partners. Brooks and I are members of an organization called the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. We are Realtists. That's our designation as members of that organization. We have phenomenal professionals in our organization who look like us and are very supportive of the work they do, including insurance agents. So we have a phenomenal one in our space. So we always have this network of the core key people who are part of a process. New construction, that agent or broker who sits sitting at that construction company, that new construction works for the builder or the broker who is managing that listing. They will not be working for you. So in every transaction, you want to have your own advocate, your own real estate broker, so that you can ensure that all your rights and everything you need are being attended to. Because this ends up not being a business transaction. As Brooks, this is a journey and it gets very emotional. Home buying is a roller coaster. I will absolutely say that. It has highs, it has lows, it has flats. I've had clients call me crying. I've had clients call me laughing. I've had clients quit and come back. I'm not going to say that there isn't a roller coaster ride for folks, but everybody's process is different. But in all the time I've been doing this, I've never had one client call me and say they regretted the decision. Never. And I can use the word never emphatically. I've never had a client who wasn't happy with where they ended up, regardless of what the process took them through. So, those are some of the important pieces and the different people that you deal with and the different places that you find yourself when you're home buying. And it doesn't stop when you're a first and second time home buyer. I'm buying a house right now and I still have those highs, and you still go through all of that. It's just a part of the process, but it's actually what makes it enjoyable too. And as long as you have a good person you're working with, I'm telling you, you're like partners in crime. And it is a great experience.
Awesome, thank you. And Nicole, you started to hint at it. And so moving to our third question, can all of you share experiences from your personal life when it comes to purchasing, whether it was your first property, your second property, an investment property, some of the highs and lows, and then lessons that you learned, lessons that you would, I suppose, impart on everyone here. And so starting with you, Nicole, and then Brooks and Darryl.
Oh, I have a deluge of stories. I'll start with my worst. So when I was looking for a home about 10 years ago, this time 10 years ago exactly, I found this home I really loved. Like I told you, I'm a reformed underwriter, so I'm always very on top of things with my own transaction, just like I am with someone else. And I let this lender know there were key pieces about my profile that needed to get in front of somebody's eyes. I knew that given the state of where we were, because it was 2013, we had just come out of where we're still kind of coming out of the Great Recession. Well, I was caught up in that Great Recession and I lost a home. I have felt that sting of losing a home. So I lost a home during the recession. So when it came to 2013, I'm still dealing with the fallout of that. And so I made sure to let him know, I need you to get this in front of an underwriter, not the automated underwriting system. No, he gave me all this pushback. He knows what he's doing. We move forward. I put an offer on this house. I get an inspection 5 days before I'm supposed to close. 5 days. He calls me and says, oh, we finally put your file in front of an underwriter and they denied it. It was denied and I lost that house 5 days before I was to close on it. And at that point I was renting. Remember I told you I lost my home. So for those 2-3 years, I rented for the first time in 10 years. And I had given notice to my landlord. So you can only imagine what happened. He then gave me 30 days to be out because he knew what I was doing because I had given him notice telling him I was moving. So that was a really difficult process. Back to not working with someone who knows what they're doing and or listens to the person who they're working with. So I only work with very short list of folks, HomeSight being one of them. And I mean very short list, 3 that meet all the needs essentially of 100% of my clients. Now, some of my clients bring their own lenders. And so I make a new relationship and I can find out, oh, they actually are pretty good. Maybe I'll add them to my roster, or nope, I'll never work with them again. They don't know what they're doing. But for the most part, that was a nightmare for me. I had children, we were displaced, but it didn't stop me from buying again. So 4 months later, I found a new lender who did what I asked him to do. And I am currently in the house that I bought through that process. It's been almost 10 years now. So there are real situations that happen, and it happens to us as professionals. So we have lived experience with that, and that there are really, now mine is an extreme case because I'll be frank, that doesn't happen to my clients because I know how to walk them through. But that kind of stuff does happen. I have had clients lose deals because of things happen. For instance, I had a client who she decided to change jobs and take 2 weeks off during that time frame, and we were closing on her home while she was off. Now, I know in our mind's eyes, we think we have a new job, we want to take 2 weeks vacation, but in the lender, that means you're unemployed. You are currently not working, regardless of whether you are starting a new job, you are currently unemployed. So that was a huge to do. They almost lost the deal because she took that 2 weeks off the week we were closing and she was unemployed. But the underwriter was going from one municipality to another. So I pulled it together. I fought for it and pulled it together and we closed it. But those are just some of the stories that things do happen in transactions. And, but we're here to walk you through that.
My story or my answer sort of relates better to another question of renting versus buying. So I won't share my story now. I'll talk about it on probably that next question, but I'll share this story of an experience because it's a family member, my sister. My sister is 58 and she just purchased her first home. And the excitement is the same if she was 23, 33, 53, but 58. And I'm sharing this because my sister, and I asked her, can I share part of this, was a single mother of 4. And she's, and had to use the systems, the government systems at times to get through school. And she used that system to get through school. And then when she was working for Chicago, they had this program that you can go and get your master's. And then they had this program that if you work for the state for so long, will wipe away your student debt. My sister just chipped away at everything that was handed to her. During the pandemic, my mother, who's now 77, was living by herself and she was experiencing depression of just being alone. And we were all separated. And she just started saying, I'm a strong woman, but I'm experiencing loneliness and I hate being by myself. But my sister at the time was renting an apartment. Cut to, we're getting to the end of the pandemic. My sister is going through her process with her job. The government came out and said, if you're at so many months in this program, we're able to cut away some of these student loans. I'll tell you, my sister was able to cut away almost $150,000 in student loan, which put her in a position to buy a house faster than she ever thought she could. She started looking for homes last year. And all the stuff we talk about, first-time home buyers and down payment assistance programs and making sure your credit, we had to walk through every step of that. And she went through every emotion. But last year she was so, we laugh about it, she was so uppity about she was approved for a loan. She would go look at houses and it would be like, oh, I ain't buying that house. I talked to you a little bit earlier about location and you got to go where the money leads you. And she just, no, I ain't buying that house. Oh, you're not going to fix the screen door? I'm not buying that house. And she waited and she waited. And then prices went up and up and up. And then she was no longer able to even afford what she could afford last year. The ending of the story was she finally got approved. She finally dealt with reality. I cursed her out enough to get her on board to make the right decision. And my sister purchased her first house in March. And then my mother was able to move in last month. The joy that my sister is walking in, the joy that my brothers and sisters have, that my mother is in a mental space of being happy that I'm with family. She purchased a beautiful house, which is a different location, but 3 bedrooms and a huge family room. And my sister gave my mother the family room and a bedroom, and she has a craft room, and my sister has this huge living room and backyard. And every morning, we were talking about before we started, what time do we get up? I get a call every morning for the past 30 days at 7 a.m. my time, which is 9 a.m. in Chicago, and my mother is videotaping or videoing me to show me that she's sitting outside in the backyard listening to old school music, drinking her cup of coffee, because she's now in a place with my sister who's beaming with pride that she was not able just to purchase her first home, but she was able to bless my mother in her older age. So I just wanted to share that because it's not just the home and it's not just about wealth building, which comes up with that, but it's what the home represents and what it has done for my sister and for our family. And so I'll just share that story.
That's a beautiful story, Brooks. And I'll keep mine brief, but in 1994, I mentioned my wife and I were able to buy a little funky bungalow in an unheard of Rainier Valley neighborhood called Columbia City. Bought that house for $99,000, a little less than that actually, because the seller did some things on the house and contributed to our closing costs, which helped us to be able to purchase the home. Well, I turned around and we sold that home to a couple that had a little young daughter, much like ours. We ended up being lifelong friends with that couple. The equity in that house and making a little bit more money down the road allowed us to buy the house I'm sitting in today. We bought this house in 2000. We bought this house for $340,000. So the first one cost $99,000, or call it 96. I was able to purchase this one because of equity and my salary going up a little bit as a real estate broker for $340,000. It's worth a lot more than that today. And because of equity and what equity can do for you, I now own a second home with my wife, and we purchased it with another couple. Well, that house is in Lisbon, Portugal. So my daughter will inherit this house and all that comes with it, and the house in Lisbon, Portugal, right? We use it as a place we can go on vacation. And if things really go crazy in the country, we got an escape route, right? So, but we love visiting there. We fell in love with it so much that we wanted to actually have a place there that's our own, that we can create this beautiful life. I'm 60 down the road when I retire. Maybe we'll live there half time and half time here back in Seattle. But this is what can happen for you just starting small, because I certainly started really small. Again, I was a stage actor. I made very, very little money, and I needed a team leader. In my case, it was my lender who said, well, here's a real estate broker you can work with. I know someone who can handle your insurance. You put together that team, and Nicole and Brooks both are the heads of these teams working on your behalf to help you navigate the journey of real estate, because that's really what it is. It's a journey, right? And so when you have a good team behind you, you can make this happen for yourself, and you can build equity for yourself instead of the person you're paying rent to, and really use it as a vehicle to pay off student debt, to send a kid to college or yourself to college, to purchase a second home, to hand down generational wealth, to survive a catastrophic medical issue, right? Equity can do all of these things for you. And the intangibles that Brooks has talked about are so incredibly important. That sense of rootedness and community and contributing and making this place great really comes with the sense that no matter what happens, I can stay, right? I own this property. Nobody gets to tell me I have to leave or something like that, or the market becomes such that I can't afford to stay. It's your property for you to do with what you want. And there's some other intangibles as well. We talk about the fact that kids who grow up in homes, right, that are owned by their parents, and the schools that surround them, those schools are based on taxes that comes from property taxes. So when you own in a community of owners, there's usually a base that allows for those schools to have some of the things and more of the things that make schools great. So there's a lot of intangibles that come along with owning as well. And so I just sort of tell you a little bit about my personal story and why I feel like this is so important. And frankly, for me, purchasing that home back in 1994 changed my life.
Thank you all so much for your transparency. I think as you, the three of you now, I've been interested in buying a home now for a couple of years, and these stories are inspiring me and making me itch to revisit that process. So thank you for your transparency. There's a lot of comments in the chat as well about how your stories were inspiring. So thank you. And For all of you that are asking questions in the chat, please continue to do so. I am putting them in a Word document that I am going to ask the panelists during the Q&A. So moving on to our fourth question. Sometimes when it comes to, well, there's this question of, does it make more sense to rent versus purchase a home? And I think that at different points in your life, it might make sense to rent while saving to purchase a home. However, for individuals right now who are asking the question to themselves, like, oh, should I continue to rent right now or should I buy a home? What would you say to them, and what are some considerations when you're deciding on what makes the most sense for you? And starting with you, Brooks, and then Nicole, and then Darryl.
So this was my story that I'm working with. Let me just say up front, it is absolutely better to purchase than to rent. Darryl already answered that. Someone is going to make money, and it's going to be that whoever owns that home. But what I found in reality is it's based upon where you are in life. It really is. While yes, I know I can benefit from owning something, is this the time for me to own it? And so I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I was told as soon as I got out, oh, you can buy a house with no money down. And so I went to college. I got married fast. She and I are still great friends today, but the marriage didn't last. I'll just say that. And it wasn't the time to buy the house. Again, we could have purchased the house, and then it would have been sold and there would have been some money made. But I had in my mind this 100% financing as a veteran is this golden ticket. And so I've been holding on to this golden ticket until I felt that it was the right time. Although I know that I can make money. And if I would have purchased something, again, it would have been building something while I'm waiting, but I wanted it to mean something to me. And so I've been renting. So then I told you I relocated here 5 years ago. And I said, okay, Brooks, is this it for you? Is this where you believe you're going to live out into you in your life? And I said, yes, this is it. I'm going to end my life here, and not end my life, but I'll be here until the end of days in Washington. And now I'm ready to use this VA loan. And with the VA loan, I'm able to buy up to a 4-unit. And so in real estate, I'm only paid when you close on the house. When you purchase your home is when I'm paid. And so I don't have a partner at this time. And so I had to look at this multi-unit, this 4-unit as my partner, somebody else bringing in some money while I'm building equity in that home. And so I wanted to share that story because as a real estate broker, I know that you build equity, and this wonderful story that Darryl just saved. If I would have bought a home years ago, it would have been worth so much now. But I think my mindset was on, I'm not ready for it because I don't know where I'm going to land. And sometimes I didn't know if I was going to always be in Chicago or go back to North Carolina. And so my truth and my story is it really is dependent upon where you are in your life and how you see your life progressing in the next year, 2 or 3 years. And now that I'm in a place where I believe I'm now ready to have something, the same benefit that we're all talking about now, I'm going to get when I buy my 4-unit building. I think the money is leading me towards Federal Way of where I can get a 4-unit building. So I'll be someplace out south. But I think renting has its purpose when you understand what you're doing. And then when you're ready for that next step, you then make that next step. So I'll just I'll add that.
Thank you, Brooks. And Nicole?
So, I am a avid homeownership, flag waver. I bought my home when I was 24, and I was a single mom, 2 kids, just graduated from college, actually going to grad school. And for me, I had the benefit of having a father who was in real estate my entire life. So I saw things differently. everyone in my home, everyone in my family was a homeowner in the Central District. Essentially almost everybody. So I saw a different dynamic of what it could do for you. Even in that red line community, they were able to do things because they own their home. So I knew that was something important, because as a single mom, I knew that I didn't know, and a single Black woman. So I'm gonna be very raw and transparent, that my income wasn't gonna grow like my white counterparts. That's just the reality of the America we live in. And so I needed that home to help augment things that I wanted to do for me and my kids down the line. So that did that. My kids helped put them through college so they don't have to have the student loans like I still have. They still have some because I got beat up by that recession, but my home saved me. And getting back into home ownership is what saved that. So now they don't have nearly the burden I have. Both of them, 26 and 22, are homeowners. My 26-year-old, we recently sold her townhouse because she left Texas to come back to Washington, and now she's gonna buy here. But she owned her home in Texas. My 22-year-old is in college in South Carolina. She owns her condo. And so this home that I sit in helped do that. This is what did that. I own real estate properties. I own rentals. So when you're talking about where you are in your life, it absolutely depends on where you are. For instance, there's some people who are very, very transient. They move a lot. Their business takes them from one place to another, to another, to another. And so there's a reason why you should be renting personally. However, there's a caveat to that. You could buy a property and make it an investment property, and while you're still traveling, that property's still making money for you. So it's a yes and. Yes, it is situational. Maybe you are not personally living in that home, but that doesn't stop you from having to own a home. Now, again, to Brooks's point, his situation was that, with the dissolution of a marriage, properties get caught up. And so I did something like that. My first marriage, I knew it was coming to an end. That was during the recession. I got rid of the house before we even divorced because I knew it was going to be problematic in that divorce. So you have to be strategic. And so it is very much where you are in your life. But for the most part, home ownership, no matter where you are, can work for whomever wants it. And your situation does dictate what that looks like. But it shouldn't have to be behind, oh, I'm trying to save money, because you're not going to save 20%. You're not going to save 10. There are things to help you get to that point. I do have a client who is saving now for the earnest money. So we'll maybe talk about that. You have to have a deposit to put down on a home. So she wants to have about $3,000-4,000 to put towards earnest money when she buys. So she is now saving. So we pushed it off a few months because she wants to increase her savings for that and to have cash when she goes into the home. That's a real tangible goal, right? So we are 5-6 months that she's saving. That's really tangible. And I have many clients who do that. And we hit the ground running as soon as they meet their goal, and they're in a home in the time frame that we set. So there are always times. I had to rent after my whole debacle with my house during the recession. I didn't have a choice. But let me tell you, as soon as that opportunity presented itself, I bought a house because I understood the importance of that. So I totally agree with Brooks. It depends on your situation, but it's not situational. Just because your situation is such that you think you have to rent, you may not have to.
I would follow up just by saying it is situational from the standpoint. So here was my situation, right? I was renting in a neighborhood called Leshai, right? We had one big dog, a Doberman Pinscher, super friendly. Well, dog needed a playmate. We got a second dog and didn't tell my landlord. And then my landlord found out. Well, guess what I got? You can't be here with 2 dogs. So giving you notice to move. My dog friend's playmate, right? Her mom, who was a real estate agent, said, hey, why don't you guys buy? And I was certainly one of those individuals, perhaps like a few of you on this call, that I just didn't believe that it was possible. Remember, I was a working stage actor here in Seattle. I made very little money, although I was having some success, as an actor in local theater. But it took someone to help open my mind, right? That it was a possibility. I needed to do some work to get there, fix some credit stuff, get a little bit of help from a parent in terms of helping with some of that down payment. Very, very little, because I had an FHA loan and we got some help from the seller. But sometimes it's a mindset shift. Even though I grew up in a home my parents owned in New Jersey, for me as a young adult here in Seattle, it just didn't seem possible. It didn't even enter my mind. So I think it's always a really good idea to, as you're doing here on this call, to get educated about the process and what's out there and make it a goal for yourself. Maybe it is the right situation for you, as it was for Brooks, for example, to be a renter at a particular time in your life. But why not have as much information and open your mind to the possibilities and give yourself a goal to become a homeowner? Because as we've talked about, pay yourself first, build equity for yourself. And I think it's a great point that Nicole made as well, that even if your circumstance requires you to be a renter, if you purchase and that's an investment property for you, which is kind of how our place in Portugal works. I'm not there all the time. I've got a renter in there right now who pays us a small rent each month. It builds up a nice little nest egg there that we use to defray the costs of the maintenance on the home and a part of the mortgage and what have you. And so, it becomes a vehicle for us, a place that we can go and vacation in and have other friends and family stay. So it's essentially an investment property for us, but a lovely place for us to go whenever we want to be there. So we're making that work for us, right? So opening your mind, getting well educated, and giving yourself a goal that you will own something. You will own either the home you're in or investment properties, a really outstanding place to go for your own family's benefit and for your own future as well.
Fantastic answers once again. And so thanks. And I wanted to ask you kind of a situational question. So I mentioned that I've been on the hunt for property for some time now. And last year I flew to Texas to look at real estate, and I was shocked to find out about closing costs. I didn't realize that they were a thing that you had to pay for. Also didn't know about property taxes, and that property taxes vary by state. Texas, it's very high compared to Washington. And essentially the homes that I was looking at initially, when I got there, I was like, oh wow, I can't afford these. And then I went to Atlanta to look at real estate, found that it was far more affordable. And for me specifically, one of my concerns, and I know that Nicole talked about fear earlier, is that I was like, I don't ever want to compete with somebody to purchase a home. And I don't want, like, as far as putting an offer, I was like, if I want a house, I just want to get that house. I don't want to go through the rigmarole with anybody. And so I've looked exclusively at new construction communities. I don't know if everybody's familiar with new construction communities, but for the ones that I went to, it's pretty much, if you want X house and it's available, you put it under contract and it's yours. It might not be ready right away, but you can get it within a few months, a couple months, might be a year. And for all of you, I suppose the question is, do you oftentimes work with individuals who are purchasing properties in new construction communities? And would you recommend new construction communities to anyone here? Are there particular advantages, I suppose, that you've seen, or disadvantages to purchasing a home within a new construction community as opposed to a resold home?
I have personal thought process and professional thought process about new construction. They are serving a purpose in that we're building more homes for people. A lot of them are not necessarily entry level or middle housing level, but they're building them more than they were before. But as a practitioner, I'm just gonna, I'm one who's very forthright, and I just shoot it like it is. I don't like new construction because the quality of work is not the same of previously built homes in our region. Now, that's not a blanket statement, but it's true for a lot of the properties that my clients fit into, which is a certain price point. Now, you get into a higher price point, you're getting, some different details from a home. But for me, it's the quality of construction. I'll give you an example. I had a coworker who bought a brand new home out here in Kent, brand new community. And about 4 or 5 months into owning the home, her daughter was playing. This is the home they bought for their kids. And she slipped and fell like kids do. And she put her arm through the wall because of the lack of workmanship in these new construction homes. So I, have kind of situational issues with that. Now, they're not all created equal. There's some good ones out here. But for me, older homes have stood the test of time from an equity perspective, from a conditioning perspective, for things like that. So that's just from conditions. From a new construction, you can still get in a battle with new construction homes like you can with a currently existing home. I had clients last year who were buying strictly new construction, and we've struggled to get into contract because people are also vying for those properties. So you're not exempt from not having to go through the rigmarole, as you said, OB, when you're buying even new construction. That's just the process of home ownership. It doesn't matter what it is you're buying. But some people want a home that no one's ever lived in, ever. New construction is the way. Some people are in a certain price point or want to be in a certain neighborhood that's coming online, and they want to do that. There's pros and cons in everything that we do, right? You just have to outweigh what's more of a pro than a con for you. But new construction has its place. We are seeing quite a bit. I would like to see some additional types of new construction come on, like condos, like multifamily duplexes. I would like to see more than just single family homes, because a lot of people can't afford the really, really good ones. But there's pros and cons, and it really depends on what you want and what you're looking to do. But I will say that I have clients who, especially first-time home buyers, you'll come in with these preconceived notions. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, and Brooks knows this. Then we start looking, and you start realizing what you don't know. And so then you start to change your mind about, oh, I didn't think about that. I was so, tunnel vision on what I wanted. I didn't realize that this is a nuanced process that has so many different pieces to it. So a lot of times people get into the space and change their mind. I just say be open about home ownership and what it is you want. Be open to the process and be open to what's available for you and what you can buy, to Brooks's point around what your money can buy you. Maybe you can't live in Seattle proper, but you can live in South King County and be in a place from a travel perspective where it still works for you. So I say that, there's a space for new construction. We need it desperately. HomeSight, we're working on a product that's going to be a co-op, and that's a totally different housing setup that we could talk about. But that's exciting because there's never been a real co-op here that made it in the state of Washington. So I'm excited about that. But there's not enough new construction coming on for the number of people we have here. But there are other options if you're open just to the process itself.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I will jump on if I may, Obi, just to say, I used to sit new construction sites. I used to represent builders right here in Southeast Seattle, and Nicole's absolutely right. Typically, a for-profit builder is building for a certain segment of the market, and it usually overshoots most first-time purchasers in this day and age. I do think in terms of new construction, being open to, as we say, different styles of housing. So we need a lot more multifamily housing, to be honest with you, here in Seattle. I live in a single family home. It doesn't have a yard because I don't want a yard. But the idea of being open to cooperative or condominium living as a first-time purchaser, there are some opportunities for new construction from that standpoint. And they're the builders, HomeSight included, we're aiming for a different type of product and a different kind of buyer. There's a lot more quality built into that because there's some economies of scale that can come with multifamily development, whereas that single family new construction build, they're typically aiming for a price point, both in finishes and everything they can get really up there. So I think people, if you're open to the possibilities of different styles of housing, new construction can be in play for you. But I do agree as well. I certainly focused in my real estate brokerage career on resale housing. I used to call it, really cool recycled housing in Rainier Valley. That's what I sold for 15 years, and that's a great way to think about it. So be open to different styles of housing, and then maybe new construction can come into play for you.
All right, thank you. And I know that we're running low on time. Do want to get to the Q&A because there was a few questions out there, but hoping that for all of you, 60 seconds or less might be impossible to say, I guess, in your personal opinion, what does having dominion over your space mean to you? Because of course, owning a home can bring control, stability, and mental relief. And Brooks, you had a great story earlier about the advantages of owning home, but starting with you, Nicole, and then Brooks and Darryl, what does having dominion over your space mean to you? 60 seconds or less.
This is mine. No one can take it from me as long as I'm paying the mortgage, period.
Thank you. All right, and Brooks.
There are studies that show that home ownership helps people increase their education, that there's a safety network to community, that they feel healthier and they're happier. There are studies that show that when you are tied to one space, your life increases in multiple ways, multiple ways, because I'm going home. And that's what I absolutely love about the journey of real estate. I am helping you find that home. So it's a magnitude of things that come from home ownership.
Yeah, I would. That's a great way of putting it, Brooks. And it's very true. There's a lot of data out there that talks about the benefits of home ownership, from health, education, well-being, heck, even tied to voting, quite frankly. And we don't have to get into like quality of school. So there's all that data out there. It's pretty easy to find. But I'll bring it real personal, right? When my daughter was a little girl, when we moved into the home I'm sitting in now, we had space. She could run up and down the halls like toddlers do. When she got a little older and she wanted a purple bathroom, I didn't have to call up the landlord to ask if it was okay to paint purple. We painted her a purple bathroom. That's power. It's a very small thing, but having choice and charting your own future for yourself without asking permission, that's one of the intangibles that comes from home ownership, or frankly, one of the tangibles, because purple paint. It's still purple to this day. Probably nobody likes it except for my daughter. She's 26 now, but it's her bathroom. And when she comes home from Brooklyn, she comes home to her purple bathroom. That's because we own this place.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, now moving to the Q&A. So there was a question earlier that asked, and this is related to looks like low interest loans and related to down payments as well. It's if you have all these no or low interest down payment loans that are due at the end of a 30-year mortgage, how do people pay off the remaining balance?
Equity, value of real estate, right? So at HomeSight, if you have a first mortgage and you purchased a home for $300,000, and we put 2 or 3 layers, if you will, or second or third liens and down payment assistance, when you go to sell that property or refinance that property, it's very likely that there's enough equity there to actually buy out, if you will, the 2 or 3 other layers that are in there. The house simply grows in value. You can refinance it, you can sell it. So you don't make payments on it. It maybe accrues interest and adds to the overall loan. But when you go to sell or refinance, those loans are just swallowed up. That's why we structure them in that way.
And that's exactly what I did. I bought this house with the down payment assistance program from the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. 2 years later, I refinanced it, paid that off, paid off that original note. I have 1 mortgage now and been moving forward with that 1 mortgage. And after 2 years, I already had equity in that house, just in 24 months. So I was also able to take off the mortgage insurance. So real quick, you have to have mortgage insurance on your home. Most programs, but not all, you have to have mortgage insurance if you're not putting down at least 20%. So that's just an insurance, a risk for the lender to have insurance on your home in case you default, they get paid back. Well, I had enough equity to get rid of that because I had so much equity in it. I was up to 80%, then I now have that 20% value, 20% equity. And then I took the down payment assistance off, that silent second off. So I got rid of all of that with refinancing. So yes, if some people stay in a home for 30 years, we don't see a lot of that now, but it still happens. We don't see a whole lot of it. If you get to the end of that 30 years and you pay the mortgage off, I can guarantee you in that 30 years, you have increased your income. the value of that home has gone through the roof. You could afford to pay that off in 30 years. But most people refinance out of it. Most people. Or when they sell the home, when they do that upgrade, they get paid off then. So it doesn't come out of your pocket unless you actually take it to that full 30 years.
Okay. And another question, and Brooks, interested if you have thoughts on this one. So when it comes to investment properties, and this is not just for Brooks, but for all of you, but maybe if we can start with Brooks. When it comes to investment properties, are there certain requirements that individuals should know of? I know that when I was looking at properties, it was communicated to me that I needed to put down 20 to 25% down if I was going to do an investment property.
And that's really, and I'll let Nicole and them, because they were the lenders, they work in the lending field. But anytime I'm dealing with a buyer who's looking to purchase an investment property, you're already talking about, I'm putting down more. I have to have this larger down payment. And then that just becomes key to getting that investment property. So the criteria is the same, getting approved for it, but there's a larger down payment that you have to have. One of the benefits that I'll mention in case someone else don't mention it. One of the benefits of an investment property is that if there are already tenants in place, you can count their rents towards your money. And so that talks about what your mortgage will be and your down payment. But the key to this, if you're buying an investment property, it's more of a larger down payment. And so I'll let Nicole and Darryl kind of talk about what that number looks like, but that's the key to investment properties. But the benefit also of using their rents.
Yeah. So right now it's 10 to 15% depending on the lender. So you have to put roughly 10 to 15% down. To your point, OB, if you're buying out of state, so almost all of my investment properties are out of state. And the states that you went to, Georgia, Texas, they have what's called homestead taxes. So here, your taxes are just your taxes when you buy the house. Of course, based on value increasing, your taxes will go up. But in those states, if you go buy a home and you don't live there, it's investment property, your tax rate is a lot different than if you did the homestead exemption and live there. So then your taxes would decrease. So Obi, if you had stayed there, those taxes would have decreased because you would have signed up for the homestead exemption. So investment properties, and there's key ways to do it, right? So if some of you have children who are grown, early 20s, this is what I did. My kids and I, we bought together. So my daughter lives there, I'm on it. It belongs to me too, but we were able to only put the 3% down because now it's a primary residence because she lives there. But when she leaves, she's a student, she's not staying there. Guess what? That turns into an investment property. And it still is because she had a roommate and the roommate paid the mortgage. So my sister's daughter was essentially living there for free because the roommate paid the mortgage because it was so low that she was able to get the roommate's rent to cover the mortgage. Like there's ways to get things done. And so, but on the face of it, you do have to have at least 10 to 15% for a down payment for investment. Markets change, right? So risk tolerances change for investment properties because the truth is, if you get into financial trouble, the first properties to go are going to be your investment properties, not your primary. So that's the reason why you have to put more money down on an investment property. It's about the risk appetite of the lender.
I have a non-answer for this, which is at HomeSight, we actually don't finance investment properties because we are only focused on you building equity for you and your family. So we only do your primary residence. The other restriction I'll talk about is we typically only work with folks that are low and moderate income. So if you make more than 80% of what's called the area median income, we have one or two programs that are available to you. But most of our clients are really at that 80% area median income or below because that's where most of our down payment assistance is aimed at. We do have a couple of programs that go outside of it, including our Sam Smith Fund, which is totally flexible money. We can use that for people up to 120% area median income. But we don't do investment property because, again, we're dedicated to home ownership, building equity for families who need it. But we don't say anything against investment. We think it's a great idea. We just don't finance it.
Okay. I guess, would there be a penalty if somebody took out a loan from HomeSight, lived in that house for a year or two, and then moved to a different state and decided to rent out that home? Are there?
So my answer here is sort of, it depends. HomeSight we have very few of these left, but years ago we did have certain homes that we financed that had a right of first refusal, where because we were aimed at building affordable home ownership, we wanted to make sure that that home was resold to another affordable buyer, if you will. So what would happen is HomeSight had an interest to be able to actually be the group that would buy the home back to resell it to another affordable buyer. We have actually very, very few of those left at this point. So at this time, I don't believe there are any real restrictions. You still would want to go over with your lender, HomeSight or otherwise, and make sure you really understand all of the restrictions, if you will, if there are any in your mortgage, to understand, like, is there a prepayment penalty? Some mortgages have them, many don't. And if it does have one, it might be that there's a penalty if you pay it back too early, like 5 years or whatever, or 3 years, because the lender wants to get a certain amount of interest back for lending you the money. So you want to be very well educated about that loan product. And again, I would go back to the fact that we offer home buyer education classes, and you meet with a HUD, Housing and Urban Development Certified Loan Counselor, when you get a loan with HomeSight, because we're going to make sure that you absolutely know what your mortgage is about and what it means. And it behooves us to do this because the amount of individuals that are delinquent on their mortgages, or get in trouble with their mortgage for HomeSight, is really, really tiny. Why? Because our clients are well educated about that mortgage. So, you're going to understand exactly what the parameters are. A good, well-informed consumer, that's a powerful individual. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, thank you. And wanted to call out that we are 3 minutes past time. So for any of you that, if you've got other plans, you are more than welcome to drop. Nicole, Brooks, Darryl, thank you for your time. If any of you need to drop, of course, you are more than welcome. If you can stay, there are a few more questions that it would be nice to get some answers to. And for all of you that have time, I'm just going to continue asking questions. I think there was three other questions. But before I resume, Nicole, Brooks, Darryl, do you have time?
Stay for a bit, sure.
Okay. All right. So are there any restrictions on low-income down payment programs, such as selling a house before a set amount of time? And I think this kind of relates to what you just talked about, Darryl. But for example, if, let's say I took out a loan with HomeSight and I lived there for a year, and then I was like, all right, ready to go to Texas or Atlanta or Arizona or wherever. And I wanted to sell that home, whether it's back to HomeSight or to sell to another individual who meets the qualifications that you mentioned. Is that possible to do within
Yes.
a year or 2 years? Okay.
It is. And typically, so for example, the cooperative that Nicole has chatted about, that we're in the process of building and developing, we hope to break ground on it late this summer, early fall. That will be available to those folks who make 80% of area median income or less, meaning you can't buy in there. You can't get the goods unless you make 80% or less. When you go to sell that property, if you choose to sell your shares, if you will, in the cooperative, you're going to have to sell it to another affordable buyers. That's one restriction. And then on the back end, it's limited equity, meaning that there's a financial calculation that happens on how much equity you can pull out. So you can absolutely sell, but how much you're going to make on it will depend on how many years you've been in there. But these, I want to emphasize, are rare. Most of the time, 95 to 97, 99% of homes that are purchased out here in the resale market, those restrictions don't necessarily exist. I mean, you want to understand your mortgage, see if there's any prepayment penalty. I've not run into a lot of those in my real estate career, quite frankly, almost none, but there really aren't that many restrictions unless you happen to be buying an affordable home that may have a few. But again, we're dedicated to creating opportunity for home ownership for you and for the folks that come behind you. And sometimes that's why we have it structured in that way.
Okay. And I know that we spoke about rent before, renting versus buying. Do any of you think that it is a good idea to, I guess, participate within a rent to own program? And also, do any of you know of particular programs that are useful for young buyers?
So I can, take part of that, and gentlemen, you can jump in. Those are really hard to find, but if you can, they work. I had a client, she was living in a home and we were looking for homes and she just couldn't find one she wanted. And she was like, I just really love the house I live in and the neighborhood I live in. I said, well, let's approach your landlords, see if they will sell it to you. And they did. So if you can do it, it is phenomenal, but they are rare. They are very, very rare. And if you do choose to go that route, make sure you bring a real estate broker to the table. Make sure the real estate broker is negotiating on your behalf, because what you tend to do is do these private party processes, and even the landlord really doesn't know what they're doing, or it's a power shift, a power dynamic. And as a first-time buyer, you want to make sure somebody's on your side that's working you through that. So to answer your question, yes, they are a good product if they're set up and they are done properly. I did that with one of my investment properties. A coworker wanted to buy it from me. She did the rent to own, and in a year she refinanced it and it became hers, and I got cashed out. So it can happen, but they are rare to find. And I really saw real quick, somebody said, is a broker and an agent the same thing? Yes, they're just used interchangeably. Here in Washington, we don't use agent anymore. We're all brokers. And then people like me who own a business or manage, I'm called a designated broker, but it's synonymous. We use them the same, but we're all real estate brokers.
I was just having this conversation actually yesterday with another agent because a client of mine is having some problems. And she's been in the business for about 30 years. And again, I've been in about 16 years. The rent to own programs, if they're done correctly, often they're not very successful for the buyer if something goes wrong. It's really in favor of the seller. So if you're doing a rent to own program, you're normally putting down some large deposit to entice this person not to outright sell it. But if you fall on hard times or if life hits you, we've seen examples where they lost this large down payment. So it's not, it's like Nicole was saying, it's not a program that everyone is doing. A lot of people say that they have rent to own programs, but if done properly, it can at times favor the owner. And so you want to really be mindful, like Nicole said, bring a broker with you just to make sure that you are covering your bases correctly. But they can work, but I'm not familiar with a lot here in Washington.
Yeah, they're very, 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 very rare. And those who market it, I would say stay away from it.
And the reason that they're rare is because you can make money. So why am I going to hold off on making this money right now to give you a chance when I know if I put my house on the market, someone's going to buy it like that? So it's one of those things to be real cautious of.
Well, I will say market does drive that too. So when we find ourselves in a really tight market where, interest rates have gotten a little higher and the market tightens up, there's not as many buyers, then we do see some sellers getting into that. They're doing private notes where they're carrying the mortgage themselves and they're selling the home and again, most of them own it outright. So a lot of them have the equity to do that and they don't have to deal with a mortgage broker because they own their home outright. So that's one of the other reasons why they're so rare, because if you have a mortgage, it's called an assumable, and sometimes you can't do that with your mortgage if you read your note. So they're tricky. So you really need to know what you're getting into. But on the face of them, they can work. But to Brooke's point, they heavily incentivize the seller, and you really have to have a strong contract to ensure you don't lose as the buyer.
Awesome, thank you. And final question before we close out here: have any of you heard of Habitat for Humanity?
Absolutely.
And is that a legit way to own a home?
Absolutely, it is. We fund a lot of mortgages for Habitat for Humanity. They're a great partner. There's Habitat Pierce County down toward Tacoma. There's a Seattle King County chapter. There's even one out that serves kind of Jefferson and the islands areas. So it's a great program. There's also Homestead Community Land Trust. The land trust model is also something worth taking a look at. And I'm just responding here in the chat directly. Someone said they tried to get in touch with HomeSight through our website portal, which in years past has given us a little bit of trouble. My apologies there. I'm putting in there, I want you to call us or email directly to a human being on our team. So Shatrice Watkins is our loan originator assistant. You can email her, just let her know that you were part of a panel workshop today. We'll take good care of you. Again, I apologize about that, but being directly in touch with people makes a difference.
And I will plug, as a part of that, the three of us are on what's called the Black Home Initiative. So the Black Home Initiative is a network of multiple stakeholders who are acutely focused on Black homeownership and increasing those numbers, because Black homeownership is the lowest of all the racial groups in this state and across the country, to be quite frank, but it's really, really bad here in Washington. So Habitat's one of those partners, Homestead Community Land Trust, one of those partners, HomeSight, my brokerage. I also have a day job. I work for US Bank, as Darryl mentioned. We're part of that process. So we are here to really uplift this work through that organization. So if you go to the blackhomeinitiative.org, you can get some additional information on the work that we're doing too through that work.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you. So thanks again for your time, for your thoughtful and transparent responses to all of the questions. For all of you in the audience, thank you for, again, joining on Saturday morning. And for those of you that stuck around to hear all the questions, and even for those that dropped, thank you for your time. And there will be a follow-up email to this session with additional information regarding Nicole, Darryl, and Brooks, so that you can continue to learn more about homeownership, or if you feel that you're at a place where you're ready to buy, then getting in touch with those individuals to start that process. And then lastly, again, the budgeting mini course was published early this morning. And so it is ready for all of you who are interested to start to take a look at that. And that, I hope you all have a fantastic Saturday and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Have
so
a good
much.
one.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again to the panelists.